It began the night an FBI agent heard his daughter whisper, "Dad, she's freezing," and found a terrified woman and her baby buried under the winter snow. The silver pendant she carried made his canine ranger react as if it held a danger older than the storm itself. From across the street, a woman in black watched them silently, never blinking, never stepping forward, just hunting with her eyes. Years later, the truth shattered everything. The pendant wasn't data. It was the last surviving identity of a witness all-powerful hands tried to erase. When the attackers came for Ivy, Lena shielded Maddie with her own body, proving a mother's courage can be stronger than fear. Even old and weak, Ranger stood between the children and the woman in black as she whispered, "The child carries the blood we need." And tonight, as the final truth rises from the snow, tell me, where are you watching from? Don't forget to like, share your thoughts, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform for more stories of hope and miracles. The snow fell thick that night. Too thick, too heavy, the kind of snow that didn't simply land, but silenced the world beneath it. Elias Carter pulled his gloved hands deeper into the pockets of his Navy FBI winter jacket as he crossed the dim bus station platform with his daughter beside him. He hadn't planned to be here tonight. It was just a shortcut after dinner. But life never warns you before it changes. Ranger halted first. The German shepherd's black and tan coat bristled, his muscles locked, his ears snapping forward like arrows. A low, controlled rumble built in his chest. The kind he made only when something was wrong, not dangerous, but wrong. Before Elias could react, Maddie tugged the corner of his jacket. Her small voice shook the frozen air. "Daddy, I heard crying." Elias felt the shift inside him, that old merge of instinct and training, wrapped in something deeper, a father's fear. Ranger moved ahead, his paws crunching snow as he guided them toward a concrete bench hiding beneath a flickering light. At first, Elias thought it was a pile of abandoned clothes, but then he saw it tremble. No, shiver. He stepped closer. A young woman, mid-20s, fragile, dressed in a thin beige cotton dress and a ripped gray cardigan, was curled around a tiny infant, shielding her from the storm. Snow clung to her long chestnut hair. Her bare legs were covered only by torn socks, her skin pale with cold and fear. Her eyes lifted for a moment, wide, dark, terrified. Not staring at Elias, but somewhere behind him, as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. The baby whimpered softly, a weak, fading cry. Maddie gasped and took a small step forward. "Daddy, she's freezing." Elias knelt in front of the woman. "Ma'am," he said gently, keeping his voice steady and low. "Are you hurt? I'm here to help." She flinched, not from him, but from whatever nightmare clung to her thoughts. She shook her head, though her blue-tinted lips betrayed her. Ranger edged closer. He sniffed the infant, then the woman's trembling hand. When his gaze locked on the silver pendant in her palm, he stiffened, ears flattening, a guttural growl rolling out of him. The pendant was engraved with 3 letters, IBS. Elias filed that away. If Ranger reacted like that, it meant something. Maddie, moved purely by instinct, removed her pink puffy coat and draped it around the baby. The woman watched her, tears filling her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice cracked, delicate, unused. Up close, Elias could see her beauty beneath the exhaustion. High cheekbones, soft, full lips. Eyes that might have been warm once, before fear hollowed them out. "What's your name?" he asked softly. The woman swallowed. "Lena." "And the baby?" She held the infant tighter. Ivy. Maddie leaned in, smiling gently. Hi, Ivy, she whispered. And the baby released a tiny trembling whimper. Lena's arms folded protectively around her child, as though guarding her from an invisible world. Lena, Elias said, it's too cold. You can't stay here. Come with us. We'll get you warm, get you safe. No. Her voice broke. I can't go anywhere with anyone. They'll find me. That word, they hung in the frozen air. Ranger snapped his head toward the parking lot. Elias followed the dog's stare. A dark sedan sat in the far corner of the lot, engine off, lightless, until, suddenly, the headlights flashed on and cut across the snow directly at them. Lena gasped, stumbling back, cradling Ivy as if shielding her from a bullet. It's them, she whispered. Please don't let them take my baby. Elias rose slowly, stepping in front of her and Maddie, his body turning to shield them from whatever waited in the dark. His hand dropped instinctively near his holster. He didn't draw, not yet, but the readiness was there. Ranger lowered his body into a defensive stance, fur raised along his spine, a growl deep and threatening vibrating through him. The car didn't move, didn't honk, didn't roll closer. It just watched. And then, the lights shut off. The car vanished into the darkness without a sound. Lena collapsed onto the bench, silent tears falling down her cheeks. Elias knelt again. Lena, he said, voice firm but gentle. Who are you running from? She opened her mouth. But no words came, only tears. And that was all the answer he needed. We're leaving, he said, sliding his arms under Ivy with practiced care. The infant's skin was ice cold, her breath shallow and rapid. Lena hesitated, scared, torn, then nodded weakly. Her legs nearly gave out as she pushed herself up. Maddie slipped her hand into Lena's sleeve, holding on like a child holding on to hope. Ranger walked tight against Lena's side, scanning every shadow. They crossed the snowy pavement toward Elias's SUV. Snowflakes spiraled like ghosts around them. The air felt heavier now, as if the night itself were watching. Elias opened the SUV door. Ranger froze again. The dog stared back toward the bus station, every muscle tensed. Elias turned. Nothing. Just swirling snow. Daddy? Maddie whispered. Is someone there? He didn't see anything. So he said the only thing a father could. Just shadows, sweetheart. But Ranger didn't believe that. He kept staring, unmoving. Far back in the darkness, the sedan returned. Silent, waiting. Only the dog noticed. Only Ranger growled, a deep warning swallowed by the storm. As Elias started the engine, Lena whispered with trembling breath, If they find me, everything ends. For all of us. Elias met her gaze in the mirror, and for the first time, saw not only fear but warning. She wasn't just a woman in trouble. She was a woman connected to something much darker than the night. And still, he drove forward. Because sometimes saving someone begins before you know what you're saving them from. When the SUV pulled away, the dark sedan blinked its headlights twice, then followed at a distance, a shadow in pursuit, seen only by the one creature who could sense what humans could not. Ranger's growl rumbled on, even after the storm swallowed the car whole. If this story moved your heart, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. May God's light watch over every lost soul tonight, just as it watched over them. Snow clung to Elias Carter's boots as he carried Lena and her infant daughter through the front door of his home. Warm air rushed over them, melting the frost clinging to Lena's hair. His house wasn't large. 3 bedrooms, simple wooden floors, warm lamps, walls lined with framed photographs of his daughter. But tonight, it felt like a sanctuary, carved from winter. Maddie ran ahead, turning on lights one by one, her golden curls bouncing as she moved. Ranger followed closely behind, his black and tan fur glistening with melted snow, the silver streak on his chest catching the warm glow of the room. But the dog's steps were different tonight, more measured, with a low hum of tension beneath every movement. He stayed fixated on Lena's hand, where the silver IBS pendant gleamed faintly. Elias had carried many victims in his career as an FBI agent, men, women, and children. But something about Lena was different. She wasn't merely cold, she was haunted. Her beauty, though striking, was overshadowed by exhaustion, the kind that came from running too long without a destination. As she stepped inside, she kept glancing back toward the window, her eyes desperate, searching for shadows only she seemed to see. "You're safe here," Elias assured her, lowering Ivy into a blanket-lined basket by the heater. The newborn's eyelids fluttered, her tiny fingers curled weakly. Lena attempted a smile, but her trembling gave her away. "Thank you. Truly. I don't want to bring trouble to your home." "Trouble found you long before you stepped inside," Elias replied. Ranger sniffed the pendant again, his ears pinned back, a sharp, uneasy reaction. He nudged it with his nose, then growled under his breath. A deep, instinctual sound Elias hadn't heard from him in years. Lena quickly closed her hand over the pendant, almost protectively. "He doesn't like it," she murmured. "He's reacting to something," Elias said. "But I don't know what." Maddie, trying to lighten the heaviness, placed her small mittened hand on Lena's arm. "You can sit with me on the couch. Daddy makes hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. It fixes everything." The innocence in her voice struck Lena like a blow. Her lips quivered, tears gathered. She knelt and pulled Maddie gently into her arms, her voice cracking. "Sweetheart, I hope you never know what real cold feels like." Elias watched them, his daughter's compassion, Lena's heartbreak. And something inside him shifted again, the same way it had when he first heard Ivy cry beneath the snow. He checked the locks on every window, every door, then pulled the curtains shut. Lena noticed, and something like relief flickered across her features. While Maddie prepared blankets for Ivy, Lena stepped quietly into the hallway. She moved with the hesitant grace of someone used to disappearing, her beige dress clinging brokenly to her slender frame. She pulled the cardigan tighter, over her shoulders. Her phone vibrated. She froze. The screen glowed with a message from an unknown number. "You think hiding in an FBI agent's home will keep you safe? You have no idea who's watching." Lena's breath hitched. She backed into the wall, the phone trembling in her hand. All color drained from her face. Another message followed. "We warned you once. This time, we take what we want." Footsteps approached. Lena quickly wiped her eyes, forced her lips into a brittle smile, and slipped the phone into her pocket. When Maddie peeked around the corner with a blanket too big for her tiny arms, Lena crouched down and forced her breathing to slow. "You okay?" Maddie asked. Lena nodded, but the facade crumbled. Tears overflowed. Maddie gently touched her cheek. "Are you cold? Or are you sad?" The question pierced her. Lena's shoulders shook as she hugged Maddie tightly, whispering something that sounded like, "I'm sorry." Elias watched from the doorway, his chest tightening. He didn't know the full story, but he knew the posture of someone who'd been hunted. He knew because he once lived it himself, years ago before Maddie was born. An operation gone wrong, a betrayal inside the bureau, and a partner he couldn't save. The memory resurfaced tonight, carried on Lena's trembling breaths. led her back to the living room. "Sit. Rest. You and Ivy will stay tonight." "But I don't." "It's not a request," Elias said softly. "It's what's right." She lowered herself onto the couch, clutching the pendant. Ranger sat at her feet, staring, not aggressive, but intensely alert. His amber eyes fixed on her as if trying to decode a secret woven into her breaths. The house eventually settled into a fragile calm. Maddie fell asleep beside Ivy's basket, her small hand resting near the infant's arm. Elias carried her to bed, brushing a stray curl from her forehead. When he returned to the living room, he found Lena awake, staring through the narrow slit between the curtains. "You keep looking outside," he said quietly. "Because they don't stop," she whispered. "They watch, they wait. And when I think it's finally over, it's not." "Tell me who they are." A pause, a swallow, a tear she didn't wipe away. "I can't, not yet." Elias didn't push further. Trauma forced its own timelines. But Ranger suddenly rose, head up, tail stiff, body rigid. He stared toward the front door and let out a low, vibrating growl, the kind that sounded like a warning from the earth itself. Lena turned pale. Elias stepped to the window, gently parting the curtain. His pulse quickened. A figure stood motionless outside the iron gate. Tall, still, unmoving despite the wind, not approaching, not leaving, just watching. It was too dark to see a face, but the shape, a long coat, rigid posture, made something deep in Elias's instincts tighten. He slipped his hand toward the holster at his hip. When he blinked, the figure was gone, but the snow on the ground remained undisturbed, untouched, as if whoever stood there left no footprints at all. Ranger walked slowly to Lena, placed his head against her knee and whined, a soft, almost sorrowful sound he rarely made. Lena froze, as though the dog's touch unlocked a memory she'd been fighting to bury. Her hand drifted to the pendant again, and for a moment, the silver charm glowed faintly under the lamp's reflection. Elias noticed her shaking. She wasn't just afraid. She was remembering something she wished she could forget. Something tied to that pendant, to the dark sedan, to whoever stood outside with no footprints in the snow. And suddenly Elias understood. Lena wasn't being chased only by people. She was being chased by her past. And maybe something far bigger, something he had unknowingly stepped into by letting her inside his home. Elias exhaled slowly. "You're not alone anymore," he said, though even he was unsure if that was a promise or a prayer. Later that night, when the house was finally quiet, Ranger sat by the door, ears flattened, teeth slightly bared, as he stared unblinking into the darkness beyond the porch, as if he knew the figure hadn't truly left. Lena slept restlessly on the couch, Ivy curled into her chest. The pendant glimmered faintly against her skin. And outside, beyond the reach of the porch light, the wind shifted, carrying with it a presence that did not belong to the night. And Ranger growled again, low and certain, because whatever stood out there wasn't a stranger. It was something that already knew Lena. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe. May God's grace guide every frightened soul toward the light, even on the coldest nights. The morning after the sleepless night felt strangely quiet. Elias Carter tightened the strap of his watch, the old steel band worn from years of fieldwork, and glanced toward the living room. Lena sat on the couch with Ivy in her arms, her long dark hair falling loosely around her face. Even in daylight, her beauty carried a hint of fragility, something delicate yet unbreakable beneath layers of fear. She rocked Ivy gently while her eyes drifted to the window again, as if checking whether the world outside still hunted her. Ranger lay at her feet, his black and tan coat gleaming in the pale light. The silver streak on his chest looked almost sharper in the morning. His gaze stayed on Lena's hand, where the IBS pendant rested. Every few seconds, he let out a soft, uncertain whine, as though the pendant whispered something only animals could sense. "We're leaving in 10, Elias said calmly while pulling on his jacket. "My lawyer owes me a favor. He'll help us look into your situation." Lena nodded, though her eyes dimmed with dread. "They'll know," she murmured. "Any movement I make, they always know." "We'll handle that," Elias assured her. "If someone's tracking you, we'll find out who." But as he said it, he caught the faint tremor in her hands, and he wondered whether he truly understood the depth of the danger she carried. The three of them rode in silence. Maddie, still half asleep, leaned against Elias's shoulder. Ranger sat upright in the back seat, eyes glued to Lena's pendant as if guarding it or warning against it. When they arrived at the law office, the building looked ordinary. Brick exterior, frosted glass door, simple lettering. But inside, warm lights and polished wood greeted them. A receptionist, a young man with sandy hair and kind eyes, stood from his desk. His nameplate read, Kyle Benson. Kyle was polite, soft-spoken, with a warm smile and a posture that hinted at someone who had grown up avoiding conflict. He greeted Elias with familiarity. "Agent Carter, it's been a while." "Kyle?" Elias replied. "Is he available?" "He's waiting inside." Kyle stepped aside. He noticed Lena, her trembling posture, the infant in her arms, and the smile on his face softened. "Please, take your time. If you need water or anything, let me know." Lena tried to smile back, but fear clung to her like a shadow. Inside the office sat Victor Hale, Elias's longtime lawyer, and one of the last few people he trusted completely. Victor was in his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair combed neatly back, deep lines carved around his sharp gray eyes, and a jaw covered in 2 days' stubble, a look that suited a man who fought court battles as fiercely as soldiers fought wars. His suit was elegant but worn around the edges, evidence of a man who cared more for winning cases than dressing for them. "Elias," Victor greeted, rising to shake his hand. "Always a pleasure, though I suspect you wouldn't come if things weren't messy." "You know me too well." Elias motioned toward Lena. "This is Lena Brooks, and her daughter Ivy." Victor's eyes, though kind, were sharp, trained to analyze every face, every twitch, every tremble. He noticed Lena's thin dress, the cardigan that barely held together, her bare legs in torn socks, the exhaustion staining her beauty, and the way she held her child like someone might tear the baby away. And then he saw the pendant. His gaze lingered for a moment, longer than necessary. "Have a seat," Victor said. "Let's see what we're dealing with." Lena hesitated before handing Victor her ID. Old, worn, the edges bent. Her fingers shook as she released it, as though giving up a part of herself. Ranger sat beside her chair, staring at Victor the moment the pendant was out of Lena's grip. Victor typed on his computer, pulling up electronic records. As the file appeared, he scanned quickly, then stopped. His brows drew together. His jaw tightened. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the screen. "Lena," he said slowly. "This part, you can't ignore." Her breathing hitched. What does it say?" Victor looked at her, not with judgment, but with the heaviness of someone delivering a truth no one wanted to hear. "This section labels you as a participating witness in a federal-level investigation 4 years ago. It suggests you were part of something serious, something criminal." Lena shook her head violently. "No, That's not right. I never meant to be involved. They forced me. I didn't have a choice. I'm not accusing you, Victor said gently. But legally, this is a problem. Elias watched her carefully, the way her shoulders tensed, the panic flashing across her face, the way her hands curled protectively around Ivy. She wasn't lying. She was terrified. What investigation? Elias asked. Victor clicked again, then froze. What the hell? What? Elias stepped closer. Victor turned the monitor so he could see. The page was empty, completely empty. Where Lena's file should be, only a blank screen remained, except for one line in red at the top. File removed, access restricted. A timestamp, 4 years ago. Victor exhaled sharply. This isn't possible. I just saw the file seconds ago. He clicked again. Nothing. Another click. Blank. This isn't a clerical issue, Victor muttered. Someone wiped it. Completely. Lena covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. They found me. Victor shook his head grimly. Lena, files don't disappear by accident. This wasn't the government trying to protect you. Someone erased your existence, your records, not to help you. He looked directly into her eyes. But to erase a witness. Ranger suddenly stood, hackles raised, eyes fixed on the office door. A low growl vibrated from him, his tail, stiff, body trembling with a tension Elias hadn't seen since a raid years ago. His amber eyes glowed with something primal, a warning or a recognition. And then the pendant lying against Lena's chest shifted, as if tugged by an unseen force. For a heartbeat, it glinted unnaturally bright, catching a ray of sunlight from the window that shouldn't have reached it. Victor, Elias, and Lena all turned, sensing a presence. Something silent, heavy, unseen. Ranger barked once sharply at the closed door. And for just a second, everyone in the room felt watched. The kind of watch that came from someone who already knew every truth that had just been spoken. Victor leaned back slowly. This goes deeper than I expected. Whoever erased your file isn't just powerful. They're close, closer than you want to believe. Lena clutched Ivy tightly. What do I do? First, Victor said, you stay alive. Second, you tell us everything you remember, even the things you think don't matter. She looked at Elias, tears leaving glistening trails down her cheeks. If I stay with you, you'll be in danger. Elias rested a hand lightly on her shoulder, his voice steady. You walked through my door. That makes you my responsibility now. Ranger pressed against her leg protectively, growling at the door again. Outside, the wind shifted. Someone, or something, moved through the hallway. A shadow passed beneath the door, and the office lights flickered. Victor swallowed. We're not alone today. The chapter ended with the sense of something closing in, not a memory, not a person, but a force determined to keep Lena silent. If this story touched your spirit, please like, comment, and subscribe. May God's hand shield every soul seeking truth in the darkness. By the time Elias Carter pulled into his driveway that evening, the unease from the lawyer's office still clung to him like a second skin. The sky outside had darkened into a heavy winter blue, shadowed by thick clouds. Snow fell in slow spirals, glittering faintly under the porch lights. Lena sat in the back seat beside Ivy, her slender fingers clutching the silver IBS pendant so tightly that the chain left faint marks along her skin. Her beauty was striking in the cold glow. Soft features dulled by exhaustion, lips pale, eyes wide with nightmares she hadn't spoken aloud. Ranger, tense and alert, refused to take his eyes off her. The silver streak on his chest shimmered oddly each time the pendant shifted. Inside the house, Maddie rushed toward them, her pink sweater bouncing with each excited step. "You're back," she chirped, unaware of the storm gathering at the edges of their small world. She hugged Lena around the waist. Lena stiffened, then slowly softened into the gesture. Elias set his keys on the counter. "Everyone's tired. Let's settle down, get something warm." A sudden banging on the front door cut through the hallway like a gunshot. Ranger lunged forward instantly, barking with a force Elias hadn't heard in years. Lena froze. The color drained from her face. No, not here. Elias stepped toward the door with caution. Through the frosted glass, he saw a silhouette, broad, heavy, a posture filled with volatile aggression. Elias opened the door only halfway, his hand hovering near his holster. Mark Dalton stood on the porch. He looked even more dangerous than the last time Elias had arrested him 2 years earlier. A man in his early 30s, tall and thick-shouldered, with a coarse jaw shadowed by unkempt stubble. His brown eyes were bloodshot, filled with the kind of rage fueled by obsession rather than reason. His black leather jacket was dusted with snow, the hood of his gray sweatshirt pulled halfway up. His fists were clenched so tightly the knuckles whitened. "You," he growled, pointing past Elias directly at Lena. "You think you can hide from me? You think changing your name erases what you did?" Lena staggered backward, nearly dropping Ivy. "Mark, please." Ranger shoved himself between Lena and the hallway, tail stiff, hackles fully raised. He bared his teeth, snarling in a deep, guttural tone, the sound of a dog ready to die before letting danger near his family. Elias stepped fully outside, closing the door behind him to shield Maddie and Lena. "Mark Dalton," he said sharply, "you're trespassing. You need to leave now." Mark ignored him. His gaze burned holes through the door, through the walls, straight toward Lena's presence. "Helena Brooksford," he shouted, using her real name like a weapon. "You think you can run forever? You think she won't find you? She already knows where you are." Inside, through the crack in the door, Lena's body nearly collapsed. Her real name, spoken aloud after all these years, felt like a curse dragged out from the grave. Maddie clutched her sleeve tightly, bewildered by the fear trembling through Lena's bones. Elias pushed forward, blocking Mark. "That's enough." Mark's lip curled. "You have no idea who you're protecting, Agent Carter, or what she took." "Last warning," Elias said. "Step off my property." But Mark leaned forward, lowering his voice with venom. "She'll take that baby. She always does." Before Elias could question him, flashing blue lights washed over the snow. 2 police cruisers pulled up. Officers stepped out, one of them a middle-aged woman with dark skin, streaks of gray in her tight curls, and sharp eyes shaped by decades of balancing toughness and compassion. Her badge read, Sergeant Alicia Gomez. She approached with a calm authority, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. "We got reports of shouting," she said. "Mark Dalton, back away." Mark's jaw twitched. "She's lying to all of you. She's dangerous. You don't know." Sergeant Gomez cut him off. "Turn around." He resisted for half a second before 2 officers forced his hands behind his back. "You're done tonight." As they led him toward the cruiser, Mark shouted one last sentence, his voice cracking with fury. "Helena, how long do you think you can outrun her?" The moment Lena heard the word, her, she buckled. Her knees nearly hit the floor. Ranger dashed to her, nudging and circling her desperately. The silver streak on his chest caught the light, shining like a warning. Maddie wrapped her arms around Lena's waist. "It's okay. Daddy will fix it. Daddy fixes everything." But Lena shook uncontrollably, she whispered. Not this. You don't understand. If she's watching, then it's already too late. Elias returned from speaking with the officers. He looked at Lena, her pale face, trembling lips, pupils blown wide with terror. And he knew the fear wasn't about Mark. It was about the woman he had never heard of. A woman Mark seemed terrified of. A woman Lena seemed broken by. Lena, Elias said softly. Who is she? Lena's mouth opened, but no answer came. Only fear. Pure, paralyzing fear. She clutched Ivy so tightly the baby whimpered. Unable to speak, Lena pointed to the window. Elias turned. At the edge of the street, half hidden by falling snow, stood a dark sedan, the same one from the bus station, and beside it, leaning casually against the door, was her. The woman's long black coat rippled in the wind. Her boots were polished, tall, elegant, yet deadly. Her face, half lit by the street lamp, was breathtaking in a sharp, sculpted way. Pale skin, dark red lips, and eyes that pierced like glass. Her black hair was tied back, revealing a jawline too perfect, too cold. She didn't move, didn't blink. She simply watched. The woman tilted her head once, a small gesture that felt like a silent claim. I found you. And Lena collapsed into Elias's arms. Ranger broke from Elias's side and sprinted to the front door, claws scratching the hardwood as he barked with a ferocity that shook the walls. His amber eyes locked on the woman in black. Then, something strange happened. The pendant around Lena's neck began to tremble. The silver chain vibrated faintly, as if responding to the woman's presence. A soft, metallic hum rose in the room, too low for Maddie to notice, but enough to make Lena gasp and clutch her chest. Elias watched in disbelief as Ranger took one step backward, not out of fear, but confusion. He had never backed away from anything. Not enemies, not pain, not death. The woman outside was different. And for a moment, Elias felt something he hadn't felt in years. A whisper beneath his ribs, a warning, a prayer, something holy or unholy stirring around them. Sergeant Gomez glanced back at Elias as she closed her cruiser door. We'll book him for trespassing and harassment, but if you need extra patrols, you call me. Elias nodded. I appreciate it. When he turned again, the woman in black was gone. The sedan gone. No tire tracks, no footprints in the snow, just emptiness. The kind that didn't feel natural. Lena trembled violently. She's coming for Ivy, she whispered. She always comes for the child. Elias placed a steadying hand on her back, guiding her inside. Ranger remained at the doorway, his body rigid as stone, staring into the darkness. The night closed around the house like a held breath. And somewhere close enough to hear a heartbeat, a woman with eyes like glass smiled. If this story touched your spirit today, please like, comment, and subscribe. May God's light shield every home from the darkness knocking at its door. The morning after Mark's arrest passed in a haze of unease. Elias Carter moved through his home with the careful discipline of a man trained to survive danger, but unable to control the danger now creeping into his life. He checked locks twice. He scanned shadows. He kept Ranger close. Lena stayed in the living room with Ivy and Maddie, her dark hair falling in waves around her trembling shoulders. Her beauty seemed dimmed by fear, eyes swollen from crying, lips pale, hands shaking every time wind pressed against the windows. Ranger refused to leave her side, the silver streak on his chest rising and falling with each tense breath. By mid-afternoon, Elias's phone rang. A mission call, unexpected, urgent. His presence was required. A violent incident downtown. Suspected ties to a group known for trafficking data, documents, and people. The same kind of group the woman in black might lead. Elias hesitated only a second, glancing at Lena. She met his eyes. "Go," she whispered. "If this is connected to me, you have to know." Maddie clung to his arm. "Daddy, come back fast." He kissed her forehead and brushed her curls gently. "Always," he said. Ranger followed him to the door, whining once, an unusual, uneasy sound. Elias knelt and held Ranger's face between his hands. "Protect them," he whispered. Ranger pressed his forehead to Elias's chest, then returned to Lena, standing guard. Elias drove into the city with a heaviness in his chest he rarely felt. Every instinct screamed that he was stepping into a trap, but he had stepped into hundreds before. What made this different was the two women in his home, and the small baby who clung to life as if fate itself had marked her. Downtown streets glimmered with fallen snow and flickering streetlights. When Elias arrived at the scene, officers surrounded a narrow alley. A man lay unconscious near a dumpster, snow-stained red beneath him. Officer Grant Miller, a tall, broad man with blonde hair and a rugged jawline, approached Elias. Grant was known for his calm under pressure, though today his eyes were sharp with something darker. "We got ambushed," Grant said, gesturing toward the collapsed metal crates. "No warning. They moved fast. Precise, like they knew we were coming." Elias studied the scene. "Any connection to the woman in black?" Grant hesitated. Witnesses said someone matching her description was here, didn't fight, just watched. A cold spear of dread slid down Elias's spine. He reached for his radio to call in additional support. But before he could speak, something moved in the shadows. A sudden metallic clang, a figure darting between alleyways. "Freeze!" Elias shouted, rushing forward. Grant followed. They turned a corner and walked straight into an explosion of violence. A masked man lunged from behind a dumpster, swinging a metal rod with brutal force. Elias ducked the first blow, but caught the second across his arm. Pain, tearing through muscle all the way to his shoulder. Grant tackled the assailant, but another attacker emerged from the shadows. Elias fought through the pain, striking back, grabbing the masked man's wrist, twisting until the weapon clanged onto the concrete. But something about their attack pattern was wrong. It wasn't random. It wasn't opportunistic. They weren't trying to kill him. They were trying to delay him. And then Elias realized too late. This wasn't an ambush for him. It was a distraction. He reached for his phone, trying to dial home. But another blow hit him from behind. His vision blurred. The world tilted sideways. He collapsed to the pavement. The last thing he heard was one of the masked men whispering, "She wants the child." The alley spun into blackness. Back at the house, Ranger jerked his head up. His ears lifted, then flattened. His body stiffened as though punched by an invisible blow. He whined, a low, long sound that made Lena freeze. Maddie was coloring beside Ivy's basket, humming softly. "Ranger?" she asked. "What's wrong?" Before Ranger could respond, a sharp knock hit the door. Lena's heart dropped into her stomach. She moved Maddie and Ivy behind her, her breath ragged. Ranger stood between them and the doorway, growling so deep it vibrated through the floor. The doorknob turned. Lena grabbed the nearest object, a small wooden stool, and raised it with trembling hands. Then the door opened. Grant Miller stumbled inside, holding Elias's badge. His face was pale, his jacket torn, snow melting into streaks down his sleeves. "Elias, he's hurt," Grant gasped. "They took him. They planned this. They're after Ivy." Lena nearly dropped to her knees. "Where is he?" "He's alive. I got him to the hospital. But whoever attacked, they meant business." Grant's breath was shaky. Panic flickered in his eyes. "He kept calling your name before he fainted." Maddie burst into tears. "Daddy." Lena hugged the little girl tightly, her own tears spilling onto Maddie's hair. "We'll go to him," Lena whispered. "We'll go now." Grant drove them to the hospital. Ranger rode in the back, pressed against the window, watching every passing shadow as though expecting the woman in black to appear in any reflection. Inside the dim hospital room, Elias lay unconscious, pale, bruised, a bandage wrapped around his shoulder. Machines beeped softly around him. Maddie climbed onto the bed and curled beside him, clutching his hand. Lena stood at his other side, clasping his uninjured hand in both of hers. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Elias, you're the reason I haven't given up. You're the reason I'm still fighting." Her confession hung in the air like a prayer. The lights flickered. Ranger growled, staring at the hallway. Maddie clung to her father. Lena looked up, and there she was, the woman in black, standing right outside the room's glass window, smiling. Her eyes drifted to Ivy, then Maddie, a hunger, an ownership, a certainty in her gaze that made Lena's blood turn to ice. Lena bolted toward the doorway, but the woman vanished, leaving behind only a whisper of perfume and a faint imprint on the fogged glass. The shape of a woman's hand, perfectly formed, impossibly cold. Minutes later, a piercing scream echoed from the hallway. Ivy's stroller had moved on its own, rolling toward an emergency exit. Maddie cried out. Ranger sprinted. Lena dove. She threw her body over Maddie just as a dark figure reached toward the child. Lena screamed, her nails digging into the tile as she kicked backward, shielding the little girl with everything she had. The woman in black paused. Her beautiful face softened into a haunting smile. "Be careful, Helena," she murmured. "That child carries the blood we need." Then she vanished into the stairwell, leaving the air colder than winter itself. Lena collapsed against the floor, shaking uncontrollably. Ranger nuzzled Maddie, keeping her safe. Nurses rushed in. And in the hospital bed, Elias stirred for the first time. Lena rushed to him, tears falling freely. Darkness had opened the door, and now it refused to close. If this moment moved your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe. May God's miracles shield every child and every family in their darkest hour. The hospital room smelled faintly of antiseptic and cold winter air leaking through the window seals. Elias Carter lay unconscious beneath the soft hum of machines, his strong features pale beneath bruises and dried blood. The room felt too quiet, too fragile, like one wrong breath could shatter everything holding their world together. Lena sat beside his bed, her long dark hair tangled over her shoulders, Ivy sleeping against her chest. Her beauty tonight was different, not the kind shaped by symmetry or youth, but by the raw vulnerability carved into her trembling lips and swollen eyes. Maddie held Elias's hand from the other side, her curls falling into her face as she whispered, "Daddy, wake up soon, okay?" Ranger paced restlessly. Every few steps, he pressed his nose against the door, then returned to Lena, whining softly as if sensing the storm brewing inside her. Grant Miller waited in the hallway, rubbing a hand over his tired face. His blonde hair was disheveled, his jacket creased from the chaos of the night. He watched through the glass, but something about the weight in Lena's shoulders made him look away. Because whatever burden she carried now, it was heavier than anything they'd seen so far. Lena finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't run anymore." She reached into her cardigan and pulled out the silver pendant, the same one Ranger reacted to every time he saw it. The chain glimmered under the dim light, the small engraved letters IBS catching and reflecting an almost unnatural shine. Maddie looked up, confused. "Miss Lena?" Lena stroked the girl's hair gently. "Sweetheart, I'm going to tell a story now. But it's not a story for kids, okay? So close your eyes and pretend you're asleep for a moment." Maddie obeyed reluctantly, curling into the crook of her father's arm. Lena inhaled shakily. Her knuckles whitened around the pendant. "Elias deserves the truth. You all do." She shifted Ivy slightly, kissed her forehead, and began. "I used to work for a pharmaceutical research company," she whispered. "A big one. The kind with too much money and too many secrets. I thought I was saving lives. I thought everything we did was for good." Ranger stopped pacing. His head lifted. His ears twitched forward. "But one night, I learned the truth." Her voice trembled. They weren't testing harmless formulas. They were experimenting on people. Homeless people, runaways, addicts. People no one would notice missing. Maddie peeked her eyes open, horrified. Lena continued, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "The trials weren't safe. People died. Horribly. And Her voice cracked. "I found out too late." The machines around Elias beeped steadily, indifferent to the confession unraveling beside them. I tried to expose them. But the company wasn't just powerful. They were protected. By money, by government ties, by threats. She touched the pendant again. "So I stole something. Data. Proof. All of it encrypted inside this." Ranger let out a soft growl. Not at her, but at the pendant, as if he sensed the weight of the evil inside it. Lena swallowed hard. The code name for the project was Ivy Blood Sequence. IBS. Her voice broke. That's what the letters mean. They were developing something. Something beyond medicine. Her eyes drifted toward Ivy, sleeping innocently against her chest. Something that required a very specific kind of genetic marker. The room went cold. Elias stirred slightly in his unconscious state, his fingers twitching. Lena wiped her tears with the back of her hand. The woman in black? She's not just hunting me. She's hunting Ivy. Because Ivy carries the genetic marker they need. They think her blood can fix their failures. Grant stepped into the doorway, face pale. "Jesus." But Lena shook her head, slipping deeper into her confession. "I'm not innocent. I'm not just a witness." Her voice lowered, trembling with guilt so deep it bruised every word. "I didn't just watch people die. I helped make it possible." She looked down, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "I signed a document, one that gave them legal cover to continue without oversight. I gave them the loophole they needed, because I was too naive, too trusting, too afraid to lose my job." She choked on the last words. "I am indirectly responsible for their deaths. And Elias..." She turned to him, her fingers brushing his limp hand. "He got hurt because of me." As Lena leaned forward, the pendant slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a metallic clink. Ranger sprang back as if the object had burned him. The lights flickered. Ivy stirred. Maddie gasped. Then a strange thing happened. The pendant glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Grant took a step back. Ranger barked, retreating to hide partially behind Lena's legs, something he had never done in his life. The pendant's glow faded after only a moment, but the air remained charged, heavy, as if the room itself had heard the truth and shuddered. And Lena understood. The evil inside that pendant wasn't just information. It was a trigger, a beacon, and every time she touched it, the woman in black could sense her. Lena bent down and picked up the pendant with trembling fingers. "I've run for years," she whispered. trying to destroy this thing, trying to find someone who could help. But no one was willing to cross the company. Everyone was too scared. She looked at Elias again, tears brimming. "You're the first person who didn't push me away. You're the first good man I've met in years." For a long moment, Lena said nothing. Then she slowly held out the pendant toward Elias, though he was still unconscious. Her hands trembled violently. "If I disappear," she whispered, "don't come after me." Maddie sat up in alarm. "No, you can't leave." Lena forced a smile through her tears. "Sweetheart, sometimes running is the only way to keep the people you love alive." She placed the pendant on the blanket beside Elias's hand. "If I vanish," Lena said softly, "don't find me. Find the truth." Her voice cracked. "That's the only way any of us survive." Elias's fingers twitched again, brushing the pendant. His brow tightened, like he heard her through the fog of unconsciousness. Lena inhaled sharply, covering her mouth as another sob rose. Ranger pressed against her leg, offering comfort, but even he seemed subdued, afraid of what came next. The room grew silent, too silent. Outside the hallway window, for just a split second, a shadow passed, tall, slender, unmistakably feminine. And then it vanished. Darkness lingered behind it, darkness that knew Lena's truth now, darkness that wanted Ivy's blood. If this story touched your spirit tonight, please like, comment, and subscribe. May God's truth guide every lost soul, especially those running from shadows. 10 years slipped by like breath on winter glass. Quiet, fragile, and marked by the lives reshaped in its wake. Snow drifted gently over the small town, covering rooftops, street lamps, and the old bus station bench where everything began. The same cold that once threatened a newborn life now settled as a soft reminder. Even winter can become a witness. Ivy Brooksford, now 10 years old, ran across the hospital courtyard with the bright stride of a child who had outrun fate. Her long dark hair flowed behind her, her cheeks rosy from the chill. She was healthy, miraculously so, despite the genetic marker that once made her a target. She waved as she spotted Lena, now 36, wearing navy scrubs and a warm cream jacket. Lena had become an emergency nurse. Her beauty matured into something gentle yet resilient, the kind carved by perseverance rather than ease. Maddie Carter, now 17, tall, confident, her golden curls tied into a loose ponytail, walked beside Lena with a protective posture she inherited from Elias. She carried herself like someone shaped by both trauma and love. Cautious eyes, steady steps, and kindness that glowed softly behind her strength. And there, on the porch of their home, lay Ranger. The German shepherd was older now. His coat dusted with gray, the silver streak on his chest faded but still distinct. He no longer ran as fast, but he watched with the same unbreakable devotion. Every evening he lay by the entrance, guarding the family that had become his life's mission. Inside, Elias Carter, now 55, sat reviewing old case files. His face had aged with grace. Lines deepened at the corners of his blue-gray eyes, the light scar on his cheek more pronounced. But his presence remained steady, magnetic, impossibly calm. He had long since recovered physically, but what changed most was the gentleness in his voice, a softness that came only from having nearly lost everything. Lena entered, removing her gloves. "Another double shift," she said with a tired smile. "You always stay later than you should," Elias replied, but affection warmed his tone. Before Lena could answer, Maddie burst in. "Mom said the police called. They caught her, the woman in black." Lena froze. The pendant, no longer worn on her neck, felt suddenly heavy in her memory. Elias stood. They caught her? Where? At the border, Maddie said. Someone tipped them off. Elias exchanged a glance with Lena, whose breathing had grown shallow. We need to go, he said quietly. They arrived at the federal holding facility an hour later. Snow blanketed the parking lot, crunching beneath their shoes. Inside, sterile lights illuminated a long corridor leading to the interview rooms. Ivy stayed with a nurse in the lobby, supervised by Ranger, who lay protectively beside her chair. His old bones ached, but he remained alert, ears twitching at every distant sound. A federal agent approached them. He was in his mid-40s, tall with a shaved head, wearing a charcoal suit and a badge clipped neatly to his belt. Dr. Samuel Rourke, head medical examiner for federal witness protection. He had sharp hazel eyes, a trimmed beard, and an air of exhaustion that came from knowing too many secrets. Dr. Rourke greeted Lena with an unreadable expression. Ms. Brooksford, or should I say, Helena? His tone held respect rather than accusation. Lena swallowed. Is she really here? Yes. And you need to hear something before we proceed. He motioned toward a private conference room. The moment the door closed, he placed a small metal case on the table, the size of a wallet. Do you recognize this? Lena's heart lurched. That's my pendant. Dr. Rourke nodded. We managed to open it. Elias leaned in. And? Dr. Rourke clicked the case open. Inside, nested in protective foam, was a tiny data module, its surface engraved faintly. IBS. But the letters were not what they once meant. Dr. Rourke looked directly into Lena's eyes. IBS never stood for Ivy blood sequence. Lena's breath halted. Her hands trembled as she reached for the case. It stands for Identity Backup Storage, Dr. Rourke continued. A covert witness protection archive designed to store the identities and testimonies of victims, especially victims who were in danger of being silenced. Lena blinked. No, that can't be right. They told me. They lied to you, Dr. Rourke said gently. On purpose. Lena's knees weakened. Elias caught her arm as she whispered, So Ivy. She wasn't the target? No, Dr. Rourke said. You were. The last survivor of the group that tried to expose them. They wanted to eliminate every piece of evidence, including the encrypted memories you carried. The pendant doesn't hold scientific data. It holds the testimonies of your team. You are the living proof of their crimes. Lena covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. Not of fear this time, but of release. 10 years of guilt unraveled in a single breath. And then she asked the question that broke the room's silence. Why didn't the system tell me? Dr. Rourke exhaled slowly. Because you never activated it. Only when the woman was captured did the failsafe trigger. It unlocked the truth, preserved for exactly this moment. Before Lena could fully process the revelation, Ranger barked sharply from the hallway. Not a frightened bark, but a triumphant one. Something like recognition shined in his aging eyes. Maddie appeared in the doorway, cheeks flushed. She wants to see you, Maddie whispered. The woman in black. She asked for Lena by name, and she said one sentence that made the entire room freeze. Lena's voice shook. What did she say? Maddie hesitated, then repeated it in a whisper. She said, You survived the night we erased everyone, and I need to know how. Lena felt the floor tilt beneath her. The truth wasn't done revealing itself. And somewhere beyond the walls, a storm gathered, not of snow, but of justice long overdue. Later that night, after statements were taken and files secured, Lena, Elias, Maddie, Ivy, and Ranger walked back toward the old bus station bench. Snow drifted softly, muting the world around them. The bench was still there, weathered, cold, unchanged, since the night Lena nearly froze to death holding Ivy. Maddie stepped forward. "I brought something." From her backpack, she pulled out a small, faded pink jacket, the same jacket she had wrapped around Ivy 10 years earlier. She placed it gently on the bench, smoothing the sleeves. "Everything began here," she said. "So let's leave something that says we made it out." Elias stood beside Lena, his breath visible in the cold air. He studied her face for a long time, her soft brown eyes, her trembling lips, her beauty strengthened by every scar fate had carved into her. "You spent years thinking you caused winter," he murmured. "But the truth is, you walked through it alone, and no one should ever do that." He took her hand, warm despite the cold. "Not you. Not anymore." Lena looked at him, tears falling freely, tears not of fear, but of finally being seen. Ranger, old and slow, pressed his head against their legs, letting out a soft, approving groan. And under the falling snow, for the first time in 10 years, Lena breathed without fear. Truth had spoken. Winter had passed. And she was not alone. If this ending touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe. May God's grace guide all who walk through their own winter nights. In the quiet moments after a storm, when the world feels cold and unfamiliar, grace has a way of finding us. Some call it chance. Others call it courage. But those who have walked through real darkness know. Miracles often arrive in the form of people who choose to stay, to fight, to love. God does not always move the mountains before us, but He sends the strength, the light, and the unexpected hands that help us climb. And in the small corners of our daily lives, in the kindness we give, the truth we protect, the burdens we share, we become part of that miracle for someone else. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more stories of hope, and carry this reminder with you. No one walks through winter alone. May God bless you and your family, and may His protection follow you wherever you go.